Good day, students. Welcome to this JSS 1 Civic Education lesson on Nigeria's foreign policy. Foreign policy is how a country manages its relationships with other countries and international organizations. Nigeria, as Africa's most populous country, largest economy, and a major oil producer, plays a significant and often leading role in African and global affairs. Understanding Nigeria's foreign policy helps citizens understand why Nigeria sends peacekeepers to other countries, why it interacts with the United Nations, and why its relations with neighbors matter for domestic security and economic development. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to define foreign policy and explain its importance, describe the 5 principles of Nigeria's foreign policy, identify major institutions that manage Nigeria's foreign relations, describe Nigeria's role in African affairs and key international organizations, and explain the relationship between foreign policy and domestic interest. Let us begin. What is foreign policy? Foreign policy is the set of goals, principles, and strategies that guide a country's relations and interactions with other sovereign states and international organizations. Domestic policy, decisions affecting people inside Nigeria, taxation, education, health, security. Foreign policy, decisions affecting Nigeria's relationships and interests outside Nigeria, diplomacy, treaties, foreign aid, peacekeeping, trade agreements, international organization membership. Who makes Nigeria's foreign policy? The President, Supreme Commander of Foreign Policy, negotiates and signs international agreements, appoints ambassadors, declares war, with NESS approval, meets foreign heads of state. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, headed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, manages Nigeria's diplomatic missions abroad, embassies, high commissions, consulates, coordinates bilateral relations. National Assembly, ratifies international treaties, approves declarations of war, allocates budget for foreign affairs. National Security Council, advises President on security dimensions of foreign policy. Ambassadors and high commissioners, represent Nigeria in foreign countries, diplomats at embassies, protect Nigerian citizens abroad. Nigeria's 5 principles of foreign policy. These principles have guided Nigerian foreign policy since independence, 1960, and are embedded in Chapter 2, Section 19 of the 1999 Constitution. 1. Africa as the centerpiece. Nigeria's primary foreign policy interest is Africa, particularly Sub-Saharan Africa and West Africa. Nigeria's national security, trade, migration, and development are most directly affected by events in African countries. Afrocentrism is the foundational principle, Africa first. 2. Sovereign equality of all nations. Nigeria believes all countries, small or large, rich or poor, are legally equal under international law, as reflected in the UN Charter. Nigeria does not accept that powerful countries can violate weaker nations' sovereignty. 3. Non-interference in the internal affairs of other states. Nigeria does not interfere in the domestic political disputes of other countries, and expects the same in return. Exception: Nigeria has intervened in African crises when invited to by regional bodies, ECOWAS, or when humanitarian crises demanded action, see below. 4. Respect for international law and treaties. Nigeria upholds agreements it has signed, participates in international law frameworks, UN Charter, African Union Constitutive Act, ECOWAS Treaty. 5. Promotion of African unity and cooperation. Nigeria actively supports Pan-African institutions, African Union, AU, ECOWAS, etc., as platforms for collective African problem-solving. Nigeria's role in African affairs. Nigeria has historically seen itself as the giant of Africa and the big brother of sub-Saharan African states, a leadership role that comes with both opportunities and resentments. Peacekeeping and peacemaking. Nigeria has been one of the largest contributors to UN peacekeeping missions globally. Nigerian soldiers have served in Sierra Leone, Liberia, Côte d'Ivoire, Sudan, Darfur, Mali, South Sudan, DR Congo, and elsewhere. ECOMOG, ECOWAS Monitoring Group. Nigeria funded and led ECOMOG military interventions in Liberia, 1990 to 1997, and Sierra Leone, 1997 to 2000, to end brutal civil wars. ECOMOG stopped Charles Taylor and the RUF, Revolutionary United Front, saved thousands of lives at enormous Nigerian financial and military cost. Nigeria-South Africa rivalry. Nigeria and South Africa are the two dominant African economies and often compete for continental leadership, e.g., South Africa challenged Nigeria's candidate for AU Commission chairperson. Decolonization support. Nigeria strongly supported anti-apartheid movements, provided financial, diplomatic, and moral support to the ANC, African National Congress, fighting South Africa's apartheid regime, severed diplomatic relations with South Africa until the end of apartheid, 1994. Nigeria also supported decolonization struggles in Namibia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Angola. The Nigerian government even nationalized Barclays Bank, a British company, in protest at British commercial relations with apartheid South Africa in 1977. Bilateral relations. UK, historical colonial relationship, Commonwealth member, strong education. UK universities have huge numbers of Nigerian students, remittances, security cooperation. Strained over Nigerian oil revenue disputes and corruption concerns. USA, strategic partnership. US is a major buyer of Nigerian oil, security cooperation, Boko Haram, tensions over democracy/human rights concerns, large Nigerian American diaspora. China is Nigeria's largest trading partner. By imports, Chinese investment in infrastructure, roads, railways, Abuja-Kaduna standard gauge rail, debt controversy, Lekki Port Chinese debt. Niger, Chad, Cameroon, Benin, immediate neighbors, porous borders, shared security threats, Boko Haram/ISWAP, Lake Chad Basin Commission. 2023 Niger Republic coup. When Niger's President Bazoum was deposed in July 2023, Nigeria, as ECOWAS chair, led diplomatic and economic pressure on the junta, threatened military intervention, ultimately failed to restore civilian rule, reflecting Nigeria's declining regional leverage. Major international organizations. United Nations, UN. Nigeria is a founding member, 1945, has sat on the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member multiple times, pays dues, contributes peacekeepers. African Union, AU. Nigeria is a founder and major funder. The AU was established 2002 to replace the OAU, Organization of African Unity. Nigeria advocates for Africa at the G20, and Nigeria joined the G20 track in 2023 under the AU's G20 membership. ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, founded 1975, headquarters in Abuja. Nigeria is the dominant member, largest economy, largest population in West Africa. Nigeria provides most of the ECOWAS budget. ECOWAS aims for regional free trade, free movement of persons, and collective security. Commonwealth of Nations, Nigeria is a member, historical British colonial link, provides educational scholarships, diplomatic networking. OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Nigeria is a member. OPEC coordinates oil production levels among member states to manage global oil prices. Nigeria's oil production quota affects domestic oil revenues. G20, Nigeria joined the G20 in 2023 under the African Union's membership. ICC, International Criminal Court. Nigeria is a signatory to the Rome Statute, commits to international criminal accountability for genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. Challenges in Nigeria's foreign policy. Domestic weakness. Nigeria's ability to lead in Africa is undermined by its domestic challenges. Insecurity, corruption, infrastructure failures, and poverty make it less credible as a model for development. Xenophobia abroad. Nigerian migrants have faced attacks in South Africa, anti-Nigerian xenophobic violence, 2019, and elsewhere, straining bilateral relations. Brain drain. The mass immigration of educated Nigerians undermines domestic development while benefiting receiving countries. 3 examination questions. Question 1. Define foreign policy and state 5 principles of Nigeria's foreign policy. Foreign policy is the set of goals, principles, and strategies that guide a country's relationships and interactions with other sovereign states and international organizations. It governs how a country pursues its national interests in the international arena through diplomacy, trade, security agreements, and participation in international organizations. 5 Principles of Nigeria's Foreign Policy, Section 19, 1999 Constitution, Africa as the centerpiece, Afrocentrism. Nigeria's primary foreign policy interest and focus is Africa. Nigerian security, trade, and development are most directly affected by African affairs. Nigeria sees itself as the big brother of sub-Saharan Africa. B. Sovereign equality of all nations. Nigeria believes all countries are legally equal under international law regardless of size or power. C. Non. Interference in the internal affairs of other states. Nigeria does not meddle in the domestic politics of other countries, with ECOWAS/humanitarian exceptions. D. Respect for international law and treaties. Nigeria upholds signed agreements and participates in international law frameworks. E. Promotion of African unity and cooperation. Nigeria actively supports Pan-African institutions, AU, ECOWAS, as platforms for collective African problem-solving. Question 2. Describe Nigeria's role in the ECOMOG interventions in Liberia and Sierra Leone. ECOMOG, ECOWAS Ceasefire Monitoring Group, was a West African military force created to intervene in regional conflicts, dominated and funded primarily by Nigeria. Liberia, 1990 to 1997. Liberia descended into brutal civil war between the government and Charles Taylor's NPFL rebel forces, and later a six-faction war. ECOMOG, led by Nigeria, intervened to restore peace and protect civilians. Nigerian military commanders, General Joshua Dogonyoro, later others, commanded the operation. ECOMOG prevented Taylor from immediately seizing Monrovia and killing its million-plus population. After years of conflict, elections were held. Charles Taylor eventually won and later faced the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Sierra Leone, 1997 to 2000. The RUF, Revolutionary United Front, rebel group notorious for chopping off civilians' hands, abducting child soldiers, and terrorizing the population, in alliance with a military junta, AFRC, overthrew President Kobo. Nigeria's ECOMOG forces restored President Kobo to power in 1998 and ultimately defeated the RUF in alliance with UN forces, ANAMSU. Significance: Nigeria spent an estimated $8 to $12 billion on ECOMOG operations, mostly in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and lost thousands of soldiers, demonstrating deep commitment to African peace at enormous domestic cost. It solidified Nigeria's leadership role in West Africa but also depleted resources badly needed at home. Question 3. Explain the relationship between Nigeria and OPEC, and why it matters for ordinary Nigerians. OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, is an international organization of 13 major oil-producing nations that collectively coordinates their oil production levels to manage global oil prices. Nigeria has been a member of OPEC since 1971. Relationship: as an OPEC member, Nigeria agrees to production quotas, limits on how much oil it can produce and sell on world markets. When OPEC collectively reduces production to raise prices, Nigeria must comply with its quota even if it needs more revenue. Conversely, when OPEC allows production increases, Nigeria can earn more from exports. Why it matters for ordinary Nigerians: A. Government revenue. Over 60% of Nigeria's government revenue comes from oil. OPEC-driven oil price changes directly affect how much money the government has to spend on education, healthcare, roads, salaries, and security. When oil prices fall, as in 2014 to 2016 and 2020, Nigeria suffers recessions, cuts in social spending, and naira devaluation. B. Petrol prices. Nigeria imports refined petroleum products. Global crude oil prices affect refining cost and therefore petrol pump prices. Prior to the Dangote refinery, now online 2023, Nigeria imported nearly all refined fuel despite being a major oil producer, creating the paradox of a fuel-scarce oil exporter. C. Exchange rate. Nigeria earns dollars from oil exports. Oil price fluctuations affect dollar inflows, which affects the naira exchange rate, which affects prices of imported goods that every Nigerian buys. 3 common mistakes. Mistake 1. Saying Nigeria owns or leads ECOWAS as if it is a Nigerian institution. ECOWAS is a regional intergovernmental organization of 15 West African member states, all are equal sovereign members. Nigeria is the most powerful and influential member, largest economy, largest population, largest military, but it does not own ECOWAS. ECOWAS has its own commission and institutions headquartered in Abuja. The 2023 Niger coup crisis showed the limits of Nigeria's ECOWAS leadership. Despite threats, ECOWAS could not restore civilian rule without consensus. Mistake 2. Confusing non-interference with total non-intervention. Nigeria's principle of non-interference means it does not interfere in another country's purely internal political matters without invitation. However, Nigeria has led ECOWAS military interventions in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Gambia. 2017, ECOMEG restored President Barrow, where the humanitarian or regional security situation required action. These interventions were done under ECOWAS authorization, not unilateral interference. The principle is nuanced, not an absolute rule against involvement. Mistake 3. Thinking foreign policy is only about diplomacy and summits. Foreign policy encompasses trade agreements that affect prices of goods in Nigerian markets, security cooperation that shapes how Nigeria fights Boko Haram, migration policy affecting Nigerians' ability to travel, debt agreements with China, World Bank, and IMF that affect Nigeria's fiscal space, oil production quotas, OPEC, affecting government revenue. Foreign policy touches every Nigerian's daily life. It is not just about presidents shaking hands at summits. Summary. Foreign policy, goals and strategies for managing international relations. Who makes? President, Supreme Authority, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, NESS, Treaty Ratification. 5 Principles, S.19, 1999 Constitution Afrocentrism, Africa First, Sovereign Equality, Non-Interference, with humanitarian exceptions, respect for international law, promotion of African unity. Nigeria's roles, peacekeeping, UN missions, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Sudan, Mali etc., ECOMOG leader, Liberia 1990-97, Sierra Leone 1997-2000, $812 be spent, anti-apartheid support, ANC, Barclays nationalization 1977, ECOWAS leadership. Key organizations, UN, founding member, AU, major funder, G20 2023, ECOWAS, headquarters Abuja, Nigeria dominant, Commonwealth, OPEC, member 1971, production quotas, oil prices government revenue Nigerians' lives, ICC. Bilateral, UK, Commonwealth, education, USA, oil trade, security, China and infrastructure investment, largest import source, neighbors, security, MNJTF, Lake Chad. Challenges, domestic weakness, xenophobia abroad, brain drain. For homework, A. State 5 principles of Nigeria's foreign policy. B. Describe Nigeria's role in ECOMOG. C. Explain Nigeria's relationship with OPEC. Attempt a quiz on your LMS. Nigeria has a big role to play in Africa and the world, and so do you as a future leader. Visit Litech Academy at academy.litech.com.ng. Until next time.